The casserole dish was still warm in my hands when I pulled into my older son's driveway. I'd left my house in Glendale at 4:30 in the morning to make the drive up to Sacramento in time for the Easter brunch, and the green bean dish I'd made the night before had sat in the passenger seat of my Buick, wrapped in 3 layers of dish towels and a heating pad. 68 years old and still showing up 2 hours early because I wanted to be useful. That's the thing nobody tells you about widowhood. You spend the first year just trying to survive, and then somewhere in year 3 or 4, you start doing this, showing up early, bringing too much food, saying yes to invitations the same day they're offered, because you're so grateful to have been remembered at all. My son's name is Wesley. He's 41, works in commercial insurance, married to a woman named Bryn, who I have always tried very hard to like. They have 2 kids, my grandson Cooper, who's 9, and my granddaughter Hazel, who's 6 and has my late husband's eyes exactly. Wesley had texted me on Thursday saying, "Mom, come up early on Sunday if you want. Bryn could use the help." And I'd said yes before I'd even finished reading it. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in the way I always did, calling out a soft hello so I wouldn't startle anyone. The smell of ham and brown sugar was coming from the oven, and there was a half-finished fruit salad on the counter, and somebody had been baking biscuits and given up halfway. Nobody answered me. I set the casserole down next to the biscuit dough and stood there in my younger son's kitchen. Sorry, my older son's kitchen. I keep mixing them up after all these years. And I listened. Voices. Down the hall, past the powder room, past the den, all the way back by the laundry room where Wesley kept a little office tucked into what used to be a sewing nook. The door was cracked open just enough to let the sound carry. I walked toward it because I thought, well, I'll let them know I'm here. I'll see what needs doing. That's when I heard my daughter-in-law say, "I just don't see why we should keep pretending. She's not getting any younger, Wes." I stopped walking. "Bryn, come on." "No, I'm serious. Her cardiologist already said her heart isn't great. She's what, 68? 69? My grandmother went at 72, and she was healthier than your mum." There was a pause. The dryer was running somewhere. I could hear it ticking. Then Wesley said, "I know. That's what got me. Not Bryn. I'd always known where I stood with Bryn. It was Wesley. My boy, the one I'd carried in a hiking backpack across half of Yosemite the summer he was 2. The one who used to fall asleep with his head in my lap during long car rides home from his grandparents' place in Bakersfield. He said, "I know the way you'd agree the weather was bad. Just a fact. Just something he'd been thinking about already." Bryn kept going, and the house has got to be worth what now? 800? 9? In this market with that lot size? Cooper's tuition alone is going to wipe us out by middle school. We can't just keep going like this. "I know, babe, and Trevor doesn't deserve half. He's done nothing for her. Nothing. He calls her once a month, and that's it. Meanwhile, we drive down for every holiday. We host her. I'll talk to her after this is all settled. Just not today. Promise? Yeah, I promise. I want to tell you that I cried right there in that hallway, that I broke a dish, or screamed, or did one of those things you see in movies. I didn't. What I did was very strange, actually. I noticed the wallpaper. Bryn had hung this floral pattern, tiny pink roses on a cream background, and I'd never paid attention to it before. But standing there, I noticed that one of the seams was peeling. Just slightly. Just at the corner near the floor. And I thought, she'll be irritated about that. She'll want it fixed before someone notices. Then I walked back to the kitchen, quietly, slowly. I picked up my purse, picked up the casserole, left it covered, still warm, and walked back through the front door and got in my car and drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over because my hands were shaking too hard to steer. I sat in the parking lot of a CVS for 45 minutes. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text. I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel and watched a young father help his little boy into a car seat across the lot. The little boy was crying about something, and the father was patient with him, kneeling down to listen, and I thought, that used to be us. That used to be Wesley and me. Then my phone buzzed. It was Wesley. The text said, "Hey Mum, you on your way?" "Bryn's wondering if you're stuck in traffic." I typed back, "Sorry honey, woke up not feeling great. Going to skip today. Give the kids a hug for me." He wrote back almost instantly, "Oh no. You okay? Anything we can do?" I stared at that message for a long time. "Anything we can do?" I wrote, "No sweetie, I just need to rest. Love you." Then I turned my phone off, drove home to Glendale, and walked through my front door at 4 in the afternoon with a casserole dish full of green beans that nobody was going to eat. The house Rolande and I had bought in 1986 was a 3-bedroom Spanish style on a quiet street near the foothills, with bougainvillea climbing the fence and a lemon tree in the back that produced more fruit every year than I could give away. I'd raised both boys in that house. Wesley had broken his arm falling off the roof when he was 12. Trevor had set a small fire in the garage trying to build a science fair volcano when he was 9. Roland had died in our bed on a Tuesday morning in March of 2019, his hand on the spread next to mine, and I'd been the one to find him when I came back from my walk. I poured myself a glass of red wine, a Cabernet from a vineyard in Paso Robles that Roland and I used to drive up to once a year, and I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd helped both boys with their algebra homework. The same table where Roland had signed the deed to the house. The same table where I'd opened the life insurance check after the funeral. I expected to feel furious. I expected the kind of rage that makes your hands hot. But what I felt instead, and I want to be clear about this because it surprised me too, was a kind of stillness, a clear, cold, focused stillness, like someone had finally turned down the noise on a radio that had been playing static for years. I'd spent 26 years as a paralegal at a probate and estate planning firm in Pasadena before I retired. I knew exactly what was about to happen to me if I did nothing. I knew the way adult children operate when they decide their parent has become an asset rather than a person. I'd watched it happen to clients 100 times, gentle nudging toward memory care facilities, the slow appropriation of bank accounts under the guise of helping mum out with bills, the convenient power of attorney request brought over with a birthday cake. I'd typed up the documents myself for 30 years. I knew the playbook because I'd helped write it. The next morning, a Monday, I called Renee Burkhart. Renee had been one of the attorneys at my old firm before she went out on her own. We'd kept in touch. Christmas cards, the occasional lunch at the Huntington Gardens. She picked up on the second ring. "Eunice, my goodness, how are you?" "Renee, I need to come see you. Today, if you can fit me in. It's about my will." There was a pause. Renee was good at pauses. "Of course. 11 o'clock work. I'll be there." Her office was on the second floor of an old brick building in South Pasadena, the kind with a creaky elevator and frosted glass on the doors. I sat across from her with my hands folded in my lap and told her, plainly, what I'd overheard. I didn't cry. She didn't either. She just took notes on a yellow legal pad and nodded every few sentences. "What do you want to do, Eunice?" "I want to rewrite everything. The will, the trust, the power of attorney, the healthcare directive, all of it, and I want to do it in a way that can't be unraveled by a grieving son routine in front of a judge." She set her pen down. "Tell me what you're thinking." I'd thought about it on the drive over. I told her trust funds for both grandchildren, Cooper and Hazel, locked until they were 28, with a co-trustee from an independent firm, not their parents, not their uncle. A separate small trust for Trevor's daughter from his first marriage, my granddaughter Marissa, who was already 19 and putting herself through community college in Reno without a dime of help from anyone. The remainder of my estate to be divided among 3 organizations: the Pasadena Humane Society, a hospice care non-profit in Glendale that had taken care of my mother in her last 6 months, and a scholarship fund at the high school where I'd graduated in 1975, earmarked for first-generation college students. Renee wrote it all down. Then she looked up. "And your sons?" "Nothing. Not a dollar, not a piece of jewelry. Their childhood photographs and any sentimental items they want to claim, that's fine, they can have those. But not the house, not the accounts, not the retirement funds, nothing. Eunice, I have to ask, are you certain? Renee, I worked at your firm for 26 years. I've seen this exact thing destroy hundreds of families. I know what I'm doing. And I know that if I do nothing, my grandchildren end up with parents who teach them that you can wait around for someone to die in order to fix your problems. I'd rather they learn from a trust fund officer they've never met than learn from Bryn." She almost smiled at that. "Okay, I'll have a draft for you by Friday. We'll need to discuss a no contest clause, and I want to talk you through some additional protections. A recorded video statement of testamentary capacity, for one, just to make this airtight. Whatever it takes. And, Eunice, yes, don't tell them. Don't even hint. Not Wesley, not Bryn, not Trevor. Not until you're ready." I wasn't planning to. I left her office at 1 o'clock and drove straight to a real estate agency in La Cañada that I'd worked with on a few client matters back in the day. The agent's name was Hollis Mendoza. She remembered me. I told her I was thinking of selling the house in Glendale and was interested in seeing what comparable properties had been going for. She offered to drive by that afternoon, do a walkthrough, give me a rough estimate. She came by at 4. She walked through every room, every closet, looked at the foundation, the roof, the electrical panel. She sat with me at the kitchen table, that table again, and showed me numbers on her tablet. In this market, with the lot size and the location, I'd list at $895. We'll likely get over asking. Probably a quick close, all cash, no contingencies. There's a lot of demand in this neighborhood right now. I nodded. "Let's do it. Listed the first week of June. I like to be moved out by mid-July." Hollis blinked at me. "That's quick. Is everything all right? Are you?" "Hollis, I'm fine. I'm just ready. Of course, whatever you want." She paused, then added gently, "Will your sons be involved in any of this?" "No," I said. "They won't." That was on a Monday. By Wednesday, I had called the activities director at a senior community in Arcadia called Westwind Terrace. I'd actually toured Westwind a year and a half earlier with a friend named Doreen. Well, not Doreen exactly, a friend of mine whose name I won't bother with here. And I'd thought it was lovely in that vague way that you think things are lovely when they don't apply to you yet. 2-bedroom apartments, full kitchens, a pool, a library, a craft room, a shuttle bus to the Norton Simon Museum every other Saturday. It hadn't applied to me then, but now, sitting at my kitchen table on a Wednesday afternoon in May, with the lemon tree heavy with fruit outside my window, it suddenly did. There was a waiting list. There was always a waiting list at the good ones. But the woman I spoke to, her name was Constance, told me they had a cancellation that had just come through that morning, a 2-bedroom on the 4th floor with a view of the San Gabriels, available for a move-in date as early as July 1st. "I'll take it," I said. Mrs. I'm sorry I didn't catch your last name." "Whitcomb. Eunice Whitcomb. And yes, I'll take it. I can come sign the paperwork tomorrow. Don't you want to come tour it first, see the unit? I've been there before. I know what I want." I drove down on Thursday and signed everything in one go. Wrote them a check from my savings account for the first 3 months. Got the keys. Stood at the window of Unit 420 Teve and looked out at the mountains for a long time before I drove home. That weekend, Wesley called. "Mom, You feeling better? We missed you on Sunday. Much better, sweetie. Just one of those things. You sure? Bryn was worried. I almost laughed. Bryn was worried. I'm sure, honey. Tell her thank you. You want to come up next weekend? We could do a do-over. Oh, I think I've got plans with the church ladies on Saturday. Let me check my calendar and call you back. That was the first lie I'd ever told Wesley. I sat with the phone in my hand after I hung up and noticed that it didn't bother me as much as I expected. The next 6 weeks were the strangest of my life. I went through every room in the house. I made 3 piles: keep, donate, gone. The keep pile was small. My photo albums, a wooden jewelry box Roland had carved for me on our 10th anniversary, my mother's wedding ring, a stack of letters Roland had sent me from his fishing trips in Oregon back in the 70s and 80s, my grandmother's quilt, the cookbook with my own handwritten notes in the margins. The donate pile filled the dining room. The gone pile went to the curb on Tuesday mornings. I packed up Wesley's old room, the trophies, the high school yearbooks, the football jersey from the season he made varsity, the postcards he'd sent me from his semester in Madrid, into 3 plastic bins, labelled them with his name, and put them in the garage. I did the same for Trevor. 2 bins for him, because Trevor had taken more of his things when he moved out at 22 and never really looked back. I imagined them both someday picking up these bins from a storage unit somewhere and going through them. Whether that someday came before or after I died, I didn't much care. I called my friend Annette, who's 71, widowed, lives 2 streets over, and told her what was happening. I'd been carrying it around for 2 weeks by then, and I needed to say it out loud to someone. We sat on her back patio with iced tea, and she listened to the whole story. And when I was done, she said, "Eunice, honey, I would have done exactly the same thing, and I would have done it faster." That made me laugh. First laugh in weeks. Real one. "Where are you going to scatter Roland?" she asked. She knew I still had his ashes on the dresser in my bedroom. 5 years. I'd never been able to do it. "I think I'll take him to the West Wind with me. Just for a while," I said. "And then maybe in the fall, when it gets cooler, I'll drive up to Big Sur. He always loved that drive. I'll come with you. I'd like that." In late May, I called Trevor. Trevor lived in Boise. He was a high school music teacher, divorced once, currently single, the kind of son who forgot Mother's Day 3 years out of 4, but who would, when he did remember, send the most thoughtful card you'd ever read. I'd long since stopped expecting much from him, and long since accepted that I loved him anyway. "Hey, Mum, everything okay? Hi, sweetheart. I wanted to let you know I'm moving." "Moving? Wait, what? Moving where?" "To a senior community out in Arcadia. I'm selling the house." A long pause. "Mom, you didn't say anything about this. Are you okay? Did something happen?" "I'm fine. I'm just ready for a change. The house is too big. The yard is too much. It's time." "Does Wesley know?" "Not yet. I'll tell him soon." "Mom," his voice changed. Got quieter. "Are you sick? Are you not telling me something?" "Trevor, I'm perfectly healthy. I'm just making a change. People are allowed to make changes." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Do you want me to come down? I could fly down this weekend." I almost cried. I want to be clear, almost. I held it back. But that was Trevor for you, the one I had written off as the careless one, the one who didn't pay attention, the one who only called once a month. And he was the one offering to get on a plane. "You don't need to come down, honey. But thank you. Really. I'm sorry I haven't been better about visiting." "Trevor, it's okay." "It's not, though. I know it's not." I let that sit. I let it sit because I didn't know what to say. Eventually he said, "I'll come down in August. For real. I'll book a ticket this week." "That would be lovely." "Mom, are you sure you're okay?" "I'm okay, Trevor. I love you too, Mum." I sat with that phone call for a long time afterward. I thought about how easy it had been to assume which of my boys would show up for me in a crisis, and how wrong I'd been about it, and how that had been my own assumption all along, not theirs. In June, the house listed, Hollis was right. We had 3 offers above asking by the end of the first weekend. I accepted one for $920,000, all cash, 15-day close. Wesley still didn't know. Bryn still didn't know. Bryn still didn't know. I packed up the last of the kitchen. I gave the lemon tree's final harvest to my neighbors, an older couple named Howell and Ramona, who'd been bringing me casseroles since the week Roland died, and who hugged me at the curb when I told them I was leaving. "You'll come visit, won't you?" Ramona said. "Of course I will. I didn't know if I would." July 1st arrived. The movers came at 7 in the morning. I stood in the empty living room of the house I'd lived in for 37 years, and I touched the doorframe where Roland had marked the boys' heights in pencil. I'd left those marks alone, told the movers not to paint over them, told the new owner's agent that those marks were part of the house now, and they could decide what to do with them, and I walked out the front door for the last time. I called Wesley from my new apartment at West Wind 2 days later. I'd unpacked enough by then to feel settled. I sat in the new living room on my old couch, looking out at the mountains, and I dialed. "Mom, hey, what's up? Wesley, I need to tell you something. I've moved." A pause. "I'm sorry, what? I've sold the house in Glendale and moved to a senior living community in Arcadia." The closing was last Friday. I could hear him breathing. I could hear Bryn's voice in the background, sharp, asking what was going on. Mom, what are you talking about? You can't. When did you didn't? I made the decision in April. I closed on the new place in May. I sold the house in June. I moved this past Tuesday. Why didn't you tell me? Because, Wesley, I overheard you and Bryn talking on Easter morning. About my heart. About the house being worth 800,000 or 900,000. About how Trevor didn't deserve half. About how you were going to talk to me after this was all settled. The silence on the other end of that phone was the loudest silence I have ever heard in my life. Mom, don't Wesley. I'm not finished. Okay, I've rewritten my will. The estate is going to your 2 children and Trevor's daughter Marissa in trust, locked until they're 28. The rest is going to charity. Neither you nor Trevor will inherit anything. And before you ask, I'm telling Trevor the same thing tonight. Mom, please. Bryn didn't mean Wesley. My voice was so calm. I didn't even recognize it. You said, I know. When she said, I know, when she said I wasn't getting any younger and her grandmother went at 72, you said, I know, like it was something you'd already been thinking. Like you'd done the math, too. He was crying. I could hear it. My son was crying on the phone, the way he used to cry when he was a little boy and had done something he knew he wasn't supposed to do. Mom, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I believe you. I do. But sorry doesn't undo it. And I'm not punishing you, Wesley. I want you to understand that. I am taking care of myself, which is something I should have started doing a long time ago. The boys' bins of childhood things are at a storage unit on Foothill Boulevard. The unit number and the code are in an email I just sent you. You can pick them up whenever you'd like. Mom, can I come see you? Not yet. I need some time. I'll call you when I'm ready. Okay, Mum. Corkly. Okay, Mum. I love you. I love you too, Wesley. I hung up. I poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on my new couch and looked at the mountains, the way the late afternoon light was hitting the ridges, and I waited to feel something. What I felt was light. Just light. I called Trevor that evening. I told him the same things in the same order. He was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, Mom, I don't care about the money. I really don't. I'm glad you did this. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. I want to know one thing, though. What's that? Are you okay? Like really? Inside? Are you okay? Yes, sweetheart, I really am. Okay, then okay. I'm still coming in August. I would love that. The first month at Westwind was an adjustment. I joined the book club. I joined a watercolor class taught by a retired art teacher named Philida, and I'm using her real first name because I want her to get credit. She's wonderful. She taught me how to mix a sky color I'd never been able to get right before. I had coffee in the common room with the woman next door, whose name I won't share, but who lost her husband 6 months before I lost Roland, and who understood without me having to explain. I learned the rhythm of the place, when the mail came, when the shuttle left, which day the dining room served fish, which night they showed old movies in the rec room. I volunteered at the hospice center in Glendale on Wednesday afternoons. I sat with patients who had no family visiting. I held their hands. I read to them sometimes. I went to their funerals when they passed. I made friends with the nurses, who were the kind of women I should have been surrounding myself with for years. In August, Trevor flew down. He stayed in my second bedroom for 5 days. We took long walks. We had lunch at the Huntington. He met Philida, and they got along ridiculously well. And I started to wonder if maybe, well, not my business. He helped me hang the last of my photographs, and we talked about Roland for the first time in years. Really talked. And he cried, and I cried, and it was the closest I'd felt to him since he was about 14. When he flew home, I drove him to LAX, and he hugged me at the curb and said, "Mom, I'm going to be better about this. I really am. You already are, Trevor." Wesley called every couple of weeks. I let him. I started taking the calls in September. We talked carefully at first, like two people walking on a frozen lake. Bryn never came up. Eventually, around Thanksgiving, he asked if he could bring the kids down to visit me. Just the kids, no Bryn. I said yes. Cooper and Hazel came down on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. We had hot chocolate in the common room. Hazel drew me a picture of the lemon tree from the old house, from memory, and it nearly broke me to see it. Cooper showed me his book report on Charlotte's Web and asked me if I thought he should read Stuart Little next. I told him I thought he should. When Wesley walked them back out to his car, he hugged me at the door of the apartment and whispered, "I love you, Mum. I'm working on things." "I know you are, sweetie. Are we going to be okay?" I thought about it. I owed him the truth. "I don't know yet, Wesley. I think we're working on it." He nodded. He didn't push. I closed the door behind them, and I stood there in my quiet apartment, looking at the picture Hazel had drawn, the lemon tree, with crooked yellow lemons and a smiling sun in the corner. And I thought about the woman who had stood in a hallway in Sacramento on an Easter morning 8 months earlier, and had not screamed, had not cried, had simply turned around and walked out. Sometimes the best thing you can do for the people who love you, and the people who don't love you the way they should, is to stop being available to be taken from, to stop standing in hallways and listening, to stop bringing casseroles to houses where you aren't really wanted, to go home, to your own home, the one you make for yourself, and to lock the door, and to sit down at your own table, and to pour yourself a glass of wine, and to begin. I'm 69 years old now. I have a view of the mountains from my kitchen window. I have friends I see every day. I have a son in Boise who flies down twice a year, and a son in Sacramento who is slowly earning his way back. I have 2 grandchildren and a step-granddaughter who will, in another decade, find themselves the beneficiaries of a trust they didn't expect, set up by a grandmother who decided she was worth protecting. I have Roland's ashes on my dresser still. I will scatter them in Big Sur this fall, with a net in the passenger seat, and I have a watercolor painting of an iris hanging in my hallway that Philida, says is the best thing I've ever done. And I have the memory of standing in a quiet hallway in my older son's house and overhearing the truth about my place in his marriage and choosing, without anger, without theatre, without explanation to anyone, to become the author of what happened next. That morning was the worst day of my life. It was also the day my life started over. I think about that hallway sometimes, the pink rose wallpaper with the seam peeling at the corner, the hum of the dryer, the exact pitch of my son's voice when he said "I know," those two small words that rearranged everything I thought I understood about the family I'd spent 40 years building. I used to believe that love was something you earned by being available, by saying yes, by bringing the casserole, hosting the holiday, driving the 4 hours, never complaining about the 4 hours. I thought if I just kept showing up, the showing up would mean something. It took standing in that hallway to understand that I had been mistaking my own exhaustion for devotion, and my children had been mistaking my devotion for permission. Here is what I learned, and I am still learning it. Every choice we make plants a seed, and every seed grows into the future we end up living in. When I raised Wesley to expect his needs to be met, I planted the seed of a man who would one day calculate my death over a kitchen counter. When I made myself small, so that Bryn would tolerate me at her table, I planted the seed of a daughter-in-law who would never need to respect me. None of that was their fault entirely. I had a hand in it. The hardest thing about getting older is realizing that the people who disappoint you are, very often, the people you taught how to disappoint you. But the seeds we plant in our 60s matter just as much as the seeds we planted in our 30s. Maybe more, because by now we know what grows from what. The morning I drove home from Sacramento with that uneaten casserole on the passenger seat, I planted a different kind of seed. I called Renee, I called Hollis, I called Constance at Westwind. I told Trevor the truth and gave him the chance to surprise me, and he did. I set up the trusts for Cooper and Hazel and Marissa, not as punishment to their parents, but as a quiet message to the next generation that grandmothers do not exist to be waited upon. The strength I needed that morning wasn't the loud kind. It was the kind that lets you walk back out a front door without slamming it. The kind that lets you tell a lie to a son who has just lied to himself about you. The kind that lets you sit in a CVS parking lot and decide, while your hands are still shaking, that you are going to spend the rest of your life as the author of your own days. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to choose yourself at 60, at 70, at 80. You are allowed to be the one who decides what your remaining years are for, and when the people who should have protected you turn out to be the ones counting your heartbeats, you do not owe them your silence. You owe yourself a life, and it is never, not for one single day, too late to begin building it.